Oh boy, do we have some Heisman Trophy drama in the Big Ten. You love to see it. You love to see the Heisman Trophy drama. We're going to address it all here on the Big Ten Huddle presented by FanDuel. I'm your host, JR. And in this short little episode, we're going to look at the Heisman Trophy for two players in Julian Sayin and Fernando Mendoza. Now, Ohio State and Indiana fans, be sure to comment. Let me know your thoughts down in the section below. Keep it civil, though, okay? I know, I know it can get a little contentious over these kind of topics because I do think that honestly, Julian Sayin and Fernando Mendoza are both worthy of the Heisman. I think that both of them are worthy for the Heisman for different reasons, personally, but I think that both of them are worthy for it, and then I will give my prediction at the end at who I think will win the Heisman at the end. Now, I'm going to look at some PFF data with you here, but before we do that, I do want to acknowledge that Julian Sayin and Fernando Mendoza have both played some difficult games this season, okay? I think there's a perception out there that Fernando Mendoza has played this much harder schedule, and while I do think that Fernando Mendoza's schedule has been harder, I don't think it's been astronomically harder like some people want to talk about. So, Fernando Mendoza has gone to Iowa and played there, and that was a difficult game. Like, that one needs to be acknowledged. They didn't play an out of conference game against somebody else, so we've only seen them against Big Ten opponents. I do think Julian Sayin has a leg up there playing Texas outside of the conference. That is against an SEC opponent, somebody that you're not super used to seeing, albeit, Ohio State just saw them last year in the playoffs, so they're a little bit used to it. But still, that was with the most recent game was with Arch Manning and some different players on offense that made things a little bit different. And Julian Sayin was not really relied upon to win the game for them in that one. He did have the long pass to Carnell Tate in that game that I believe that one was a touchdown, or if it wasn't a touchdown, it at least set them up to get a touchdown on the goal line. And so you do have that pass, but really outside of that, Ohio State did not rely on Julian Sayin a whole lot to win them the game. If they would have relied on him more, I think that Julian Sayin would be running away with this Heisman Trophy. But as we see on the FanDuel odds, right now, as I'm speaking about it, and I say right now because it's kind of been going back and forth a little bit, Julian Sayin is at plus 160 to win the Heisman Trophy. Fernando Mendoza is at plus 175. Ty Simpson's at plus 450. If anybody is still telling you that Ty Simpson's going to win the Heisman Trophy or he should win the Heisman Trophy, just immediately disregard their opinion. Holy cow. Like, the amount of crazy SEC bias. I saw a tweet earlier today from Dan Orlovsky, who said that Ty Simpson and Fernando Mendoza are the two best quarterbacks in all of college football. Like, no, Ty Simpson is not. Ty Simpson is a good quarterback who does some really nice things, but he is not one of the best, or one of the two best quarterbacks in all of college football. What he is he's the token child for the SEC. Anyway, this is about Fernando Mendoza and Julian Sayin. So sorry, I have to go on a rant every now and then against the SEC, but I think some people like it. So, maybe I should do it more often. Anyway, Julian Sayin is above Fernando Mendoza in the FanDuel Heisman Trophy odds, but just barely, right? They're pretty much neck and neck, and they're pretty much the top two above it all. So what is it that kind of gives each of them the kind of extra boost to win the Heisman? Because I think when we're talking about the Heisman, we have to recognize this is an award that they say goes to the best player in college football, but it doesn't really go to the best player in college football. Oftentimes it's a quarterback. Yes, I know Travis Hunter won it last year, but oftentimes it's a quarterback, and oftentimes it's a quarterback of one of the best teams in the nation in all of college football. Now, one of the reasons why that is because typically one of those quarterbacks has some kind of like amazing outlier stat. Maybe they set a record in something, right? You saw Jaden. What was the LSU guy's name? Jaden Daniels. That's what it was. Jaden Daniels. He had an outstanding deep ball, and that was one of the things. And he also had mobility and everything else. So that was one of the things. Caleb Williams. He was so off script and was able to kind of be creative, do his own thing. Bryce Underwood. Bryce Underwood might get there eventually, but Bryce Young was kind of the same way as well. But Bryce Young did it, at a little bit of smaller stature and some of that stuff, and so that made him a little bit more intriguing intriguing as well. You had Joe Burrow. He was obviously one of the big ones. Devontae Smith. He was going to be a wide, like, imagine if you had the wide receiver duo of Jeremiah Smith and Carnell Tate, but Carnell Tate got hurt, so then all the targets just got funneled to Jeremiah Smith. That's basically what happened with Alabama in the 2020 season. They had a really good wide receiver duo of Devontae Smith, and I'm blanking on who the other guy's name was, but he got hurt either in the preseason or very early on in the season, and essentially Devontae Smith just went crazy the entire year because Mac Jones was like, just throw it up to Devontae, he's out there somewhere, and he typically was out there somewhere, and he won the game. So all of these guys who win the Heisman Trophy need some kind of stat or storyline or record or like a something that people can connect to, or something that they can point to, or a moment maybe that kind of delivers them that to say this is why this guy wins the Heisman. Well, for Julian Sayin, it's his completion percentage on the season. He is nearly 81% completion percentage. I think right now he sits at like 80.9% or something like that. And he's doing this with a lot of people saying Julian Sayin, oh, he's just a check down merchant and all this stuff. He's really not. 9.9 yards per attempt, 24 touchdowns, and 4 interceptions. If we go to his passing depth, these should be the 20-yard throws that come up. Julian Sayin has thrown a lot of 20-yard plus deep balls. Yeah, deep 20-yard plus passes. He's thrown 32 attempts. Now, Fernando Mendoza's thrown 33. I don't think necessarily, the amount that you've thrown wins you the Heisman, but I do think it shows that, like, okay, this guy isn't just a check down merchant. Like, he's actually somebody out there that is gonna actually throw the ball up there a little bit more. So if we look at attempts out there, neither one of them are super high up there. They're both outside of the top 50 in deep ball attempts, but that doesn't mean that they're, like check down merchants or anything like that. They're just two quarterbacks that don't go deep every single time, and they're smart with how much they're going to go deep. And typically when they do go deep, they're going to complete the pass. The thing is, Julian Sayin does it at a pretty insane clip, as Julian Sayin has a nearly 70% completion percentage on passes of 70 yards or 20 yards or more. So that's kind of Julian Sayin's exceptional kind of trait, or his exceptional stat that kind of gets him up there with the recognition a little bit more. I mean, he's thrown less passes than Fernando Mendoza, but has 20, more than 20 completions than Fernando Mendoza. Like, that kind of efficiency is something that people are really going to like. Now, of course, he doesn't run the ball as well as he can run the ball. He's shown that a few times, but they don't, put together design runs for him and stuff. His ADOT is 8.7. Fernando Mendoza's 9.2. That's really close. They both average out or estimate out to about 9. And then Julian Sayin, he has been sacked 7 times. Fernando Mendoza 10. Now, the thing that Fernando Mendoza has going for him is he leads the nation right now, unless something has happened tonight that I'm not aware of. He leads the nation in total touchdowns on the season. If not total touchdowns, he's high up there in total touchdowns, and he's high up there in passing touchdowns as well. So when you have those kind of stats, you're going to get recognition. And then on top of that, he had the game-winning pass, which was just a short pass that the wide receiver did something with, but it was still a really good pass to, out in front to release his wide receiver to be able to go and run for the touchdown. He had the game-winning pass against Iowa. He had the game-winning moment after the interception against Oregon, where he was able to drive his team down the field, and they were able to score and take care of business there. And then just this past game against Penn State, albeit not a great football team, but they are a team with a big brand and recognition of their talent, that kind of stuff. So people are going to fall in love with the game-winning drive that he had in that one as well. And I can already hear the Ohio State fans telling me, like, whoa, he threw an interception before all of those, just setting himself up. I get that, but that's not what Heisman voters are looking for or what they're going to see. Heisman voters are looking for a storyline or a moment that they can point to, or a stat that they can point to and say, this guy has to win it all, right? Travis Hunter, a big thing with him was like his usage, right? He was being used all the time, and he was one of the best cornerbacks in the nation. And if he was being used at a consistent rate, he probably would have been one of the best wide receivers in the nation as well last season. And so that's something you can point to with him. You have to point to one of these two quarterbacks to be able to say that's why he wins the entire Heisman Trophy. And for Julian Sayin, I don't think the completion percentage stat is something that you can point to as easily as the moment of the final drive at the end of the Penn State game and the Oregon game and Iowa games and stuff like that. Is it as impressive? I personally think the completion percentage is more impressive just because Fernando Mendoza did get his teams into those situations with interceptions and stuff like that. But overall, I think that the easier thing to point to is what Fernando Mendoza has. But here's my prediction with who's going to win the Heisman Trophy. Whoever wins the Big Ten championship game. Both of these teams are on a collision course right now to be in the Big Ten championship game, and whoever wins that game, go ahead and book it. I think they're going to be the one who wins the Heisman. If you're feeling good about it, just go on over to FanDuel and bet it. Parlay together the Big Ten conference winner, which Ohio State sits at minus 165 and Indiana at plus 150. And then the Heisman is Julian Sayin at plus 160 and Fernando Mendoza at plus 175. If you're an Ohio State fan, put your money where your mouth is. All right, put money down on Ohio State to win the Big Ten championship, the Heisman Trophy with Julian Sayin, and you know what? Just go and do the national championship too. All right, 3-leg parlay. These are all pretty good odds, so you're not going to make a whole lot out of it. But you put 3 in there, you might make a little bit more. I'm not going to put it all together and see how much they make. But the other thing that I forgot to mention with Julian Sayin that does kind of drag him down a little bit, it's Jeremiah Smith and Carnell Tate. I don't think that people should be dinged for their wide receivers unless it's just completely obvious that their wide receiver is all that they are, which is what you saw with Mac Jones at Alabama. But other people are going to ding Julian Sayin for that. They're going to say, well, you just have the best wide receivers in the country, which, yes, having the best wide receivers in the country does help. But it doesn't completely negate everything that you've done. Did Jaden Daniels have over 80% completion percentage? Did Joe Burrow have, some of the efficiency numbers that Julian Sayin did? Those guys had just as good, if not better. I wouldn't say better, just as good or slightly the same, wide receiver talent as Julian Sayin has. And those guys still won the Heisman. So it's not a 1-for-1 comparison, but with Ohio State and how good the receivers are, it's definitely something that is thought about. And that's the other thing that Fernando Mendoza had is like Elijah Surratt wasn't in this game. You were throwing to a guy named Charlie Becker. That name does not not one I've heard a lot. I believe he's from like Nashville, Tennessee or something like that. So he's not even like a homegrown Indiana kid or anything. So, I mean, he could be. I don't know. I just looked at his 24/7 profile. If I'm incorrect, I apologize. But anyway, I do think both of these guys have the best odds right now to win the Heisman Trophy. I think both of them have an argument for it. But ultimately, whoever wins the Big Ten championship game is, I think, the one who is going to win the Heisman Trophy in the end. So we'll see how that works out. We'll see what happens. I appreciate you guys being here. Please do like, subscribe, and let me know who you think will or should win the Heisman at the end of the day. Have a good one. We'll see you later.